The Unfiltered by Jade.
Jade. Welcome to The Unfiltered by Jade, where we educate, empower, and entertain. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, download, donate, and make everybody know about this.
Beats by RB Records.
Shopping assistance, your style, your budget. Our services include online and local shopping for individuals and businesses, personal shopping, purchasing of company and office supplies, importing and exporting small packages across Jamaica and worldwide, and helping you find unique gifts and items for all events and occasions. Contact us at 876-919-5195 or shoppingassistance2015@gmail.com. Shopping Assistance, your style, your budget.
Welcome back to The Unfiltered by Jade. Today we have with us here Shelly Najjar, and we are here to speak about food cravings. Now, we all have problems with food cravings. We do. Some persons have it with chocolate, some have it with different things, but we all have this struggle with food cravings. And we're here to speak to Shelly about it. Now, Shelly Najjar, she's a registered dietitian nutritionist and a certified intuitive eating counselor with a master's degree in public health nutrition. So she's the perfect person to talk about this with you. So hi, Shelly.
Hello, Jade. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you so much for being on the show. Now, Shelly, because we all struggle with this, I want you first to distinguish between emotional food craving and genuine hunger.
Oh, that is such a good question. And it's cool that you already distinguish them, because I think that a lot of people, that's one of the first things we have to talk about, is that difference between how do you know if you're even hungry, right? That's before you can say like, oh, I just know that this is not a hunger thing or that this is a hunger thing. We have to go back. And so a lot of my clients, we have to relearn what our hunger signals are, what those cues are. So that's one of the things. So if you don't have that established, we have to establish that. Like, what are those signals that tell you if you're hungry or not?
Mm-hmm.
And then what else is going on, right? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be this, I'm hungry or I'm not hungry. And then if I'm not hungry, it must be emotional. And if I'm hungry, it can't be emotional. It's not an either or thing. Sometimes it's both. So it's a little bit more complex than like the short answer of like, oh yeah, I can definitely just tell right away I'm hungry or I'm not hungry. Or this is an emotional craving or not an emotional craving. And there's all kinds of other things that we may notice our cravings come up as well, not just the emotions, but maybe even something like restriction can cause more cravings too. So but such a great question to start off with, that difference, right? Some of the reasons why we might have that in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes when I hear people say, I feel peckish, is that like an emotion, or is that just between hunger and not being hungry? Like, what is that?
Yeah, the middle part, right? Maybe peckish. I mean, like, sometimes we think, and there's lots of ways to think about hunger and fullness. The way I think about it is a map with landmarks. And so when you're giving directions, you probably say something like, you go over to this area and you'll see whatever, like the post office or the church or something. And then you're going to turn right. And then you're going to look for the next thing. And then you're going to look for the next thing. So especially if you're not familiar with it, that's very helpful, right? To know, oh, I'm looking for a certain thing that I can tell or other people have seen. And so might be something that I can pay attention to. Where is that thing? It's the same thing with hunger and fullness. A lot of times we know when we're very extremely hungry and very extremely full, or maybe even if it's not quite that extreme, We might know when we're meal hungry, like I'm hungry enough for a full meal,
Right.
but maybe not that sign that you're getting hungry, or I'm not full, I'm not satisfied. I could eat a little bit more, but it's in the middle of like a meeting or something and you kind of get that feeling, but you don't know what it is. That might be peckish, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
able to eat a little bit of something, not a full meal, and I want it. And then that's where we get that confusion between what is feeling when we say I'm feeling something. Is it the emotional feeling or is it a physical feeling? Like I am noticing the physical feeling of hunger a little bit, maybe not as extreme as meal hunger,
Right.
but I had that physical feeling, or is it and or, right? Because it can be both, like I said. Maybe it's also that I am emotionally feeling or I'm feeling the urge to do something.
Like I'm being bored, so I want to eat.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. That's where the emotional feelings comes in. What else?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like and it can also be tied to also a breakup. You're emotional. You're sad, so you eat. That's where emotional feelings come into.
Oh, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be just negative ones, right? It could be I'm happy, I want to celebrate. What do we
Mm.
do? When we
Okay.
celebrate, yeah. So much around food. I want to gather with family. I want to do something
Yes, we
fun.
have to have food.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. What are some of the healthy ways to satisfy food cravings without overindulging?
Oh, well, that has a lot to do with why they're coming up for you in that moment, or with you habitually. Like, what is the main reason? The underlying reason is always going to be the healthiest place to address that, right? So we address the underlying cause, and that will help you with the majority of the issues around food cravings. And sometimes people don't always like this answer, but sometimes the best thing to do is to eat the thing because
That's right.
it's not off limits, right? The way that I practice, all food fits. There's no food that's off limits. Even if you have a health condition, I help you figure out how that works so that you can eat and you can enjoy your food. And you don't have to put things off limits. And you can enjoy your health and you can pursue your health without having to go at it directly. So we
Hmm.
can go for satisfaction. And when we're satisfied, we don't want things as much, right? Because we're already satisfied. And so addressing that piece of like, what is it that is it's going to take to get you to be satisfied, that can be a really good thing. And it may not be food, right? Sometimes it's food. Sometimes it's eating the thing. Sometimes it's eating the thing intentionally. So say it was about a happy memory or a sad memory or something, and you want to eat a food and you've decided that instead of just stuffing your face with the food and trying to drown your emotions, you're going to say you missing your grandmother. Maybe you want to eat the food that your grandmother made.
Right.
You want to celebrate that. You want to have that memory. So you cook it, you think about it, her, you look at some pictures, you put her favorite song, and you eat the food. And that's a very different experience than, inhaling a bag of chips, right? So it's a very intentional process, and it is nourishing the places that need nourishment that aren't necessarily just about the food while still incorporating that food. And so that's going to be a much more satisfying experience even though we're eating something, right? Even if we decide to eat the chips, maybe the chips is your grandmother's favorite food, or maybe it's just something that is very comforting for you.
Right.
Because food actually is a comforting thing, like
Yes, it is.
biologically,
Yes, it
it's
is.
comforting.
Mhm.
So we don't want to say that it's not, right? We don't want to say that, oh, well, we have to ignore all this thing. That can be an important piece of this puzzle, but if it's the only piece of this puzzle, if it's the only tool in your toolkit to help you with these emotions, to help you in this process, if the only time that you ever notice that you're hungry is when you're craving food because you're restricting so much everywhere else, let's address that underlying piece of the
Okay.
restriction, or underlying piece of I don't know how to tell if I'm hungry, or underlying piece of I don't know
Right.
what to do with my emotions, right?
Right. I like them. Are there specific nutrients or food groups that we might be lacking that would be causing our cravings?
Oh, so I saw on your I listened to a few of your past episodes, and I wasn't able to listen to this one. So I was curious to see what the person talked about around pica or pica, depending on how you
Mm-hmm.
pronounce it, because that's the only time that I've read research around like a micronutrient deficiency and a craving. That's the only time in the research that I'm familiar with that was actually held up. The rest of the time, so like for the vast majority of us, cravings are not related to like a specific mineral deficiency as told by the research, right? It doesn't mean
Right.
that it doesn't happen. It just means that it seems that we can't quantify that in the research. However, the other piece that is quantifiable is there's a lot of cravings that happen when we restrict, and that is supported by the research. So if we are saying, I can't have this, this is off limits, or I'm trying to restrict my total calories, or I'm trying to restrict my total food intake, my portion control, all these kind of things that we think of as healthy, I'm trying to control my carbohydrates, I'm trying to control my fat. These foods are the ones that you're going to be craving more.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Um, yeah, we're gonna tend to eat more of those things because they're put a limit on it.
Exactly. It's like saying that you cannot do something, right? Like if I say, don't think about the purple elephant,
That's what we're
my,
gonna think about.
of course. And I just set you up to fail, right? But prior to this, you were never thinking about a purple elephant. So I've
True.
created a rule that now you have to expend energy and, self-discipline to try to achieve, which is failing anyway. And now you're
Yes.
going to feel bad about yourself. And I've created this whole situation that never had to exist in the first place.
True. Very, very true. I think for the pica or pica, how it's pronounced, situation, it's really we're really speaking specifically or about also for people who are pregnant and have cravings for different things. If it's healthy, if it's not healthy. I think that's where we're talking about. And it also came up with the fact that sometimes they give us limits. No, you can't eat this while being pregnant. But that's what they go for because they give us a
Yes.
limit on it. So we're gonna eat it.
Yes.
Uh,
And I think that happens regardless of whether you're pregnant, regardless of whether you have pica. It's the same situation in our
yes, it
brains,
is.
right? And there's ways around that. It's just that our normal way of doing health and nutrition is still based on that restriction.
Yes. Take away the restriction and we'll be better.
Definitely.
What are some mindfulness techniques that we can use to manage and overcome our intense food cravings?
So it's so interesting because I often talk about mindset, which is
Mm-hmm.
different than mindfulness.
Mm.
So mindset is the way that we think about it, right? The how and the
Okay.
why, and the kind of that thinking about ourselves after and before we eat and all that. The mindfulness is being in this moment. So whatever we can do to be more in this moment right now and be intentional in this moment right now, that's mindfulness. And so it doesn't have to look like what everybody else says it has to look like. I'm going to give some tips, but it doesn't mean that just because, something that you do isn't on this list or isn't something that a lot of people do, or you don't have time or the desire to do like
Rain.
3 deep breaths and a full meditation practice, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter. Are you doing something that helps you connect to this present moment? Or are you identifying that you're having trouble connecting to this present moment? Because that in itself can also give you lots of information that can
Okay.
help with that, the underlying issue, right? The identification, or maybe it's part of that. I have so many thoughts about this now. so, so let's go to the tips first. How about that?
Sure.
Okay. So one tip is a deep breath before you start eating, or when you're starting to think about that craving, or you've identified that you have that feeling of wanting something very intensely.
Yes.
Just take a deep breath, sit up straight, shift around in your body a little bit, take a really full deep breath, feel that lungs expansion, and then release that. And it doesn't mean that you are doing this so that you don't eat. That's very important to know, because that's, again, a form of restriction, right? I'm trying to substitute my eating, and instead I'm going to say, I'm going to breathe instead of eat. That's not a good plan for survival.
No, it's not.
So this is not to postpone or eliminate your need to eat. This is to help you get into the moment right now and to shift a little bit in your body, because sometimes we just want something. We have that general feeling of wanting in our body because we're not satisfied, because that's a signal our body is putting out that something is wrong or something needs attention. And sometimes it's because we're holding our breath. Sometimes it's because we're stressed. And when we're stressed, different hormones are released, different things in our body start to happen, and that can lead to other feelings like being hungry or like wanting something,
Right.
when really what we need is a little bit of ways to process that stress or to relieve that stress
Okay.
or discomfort or something like that. So that's like probably my number one thing is like, take a deep breath. It's going to be helpful no matter what, even if you decide to eat that thing, because at least you'll be more in that moment when you're eating that thing, which is more satisfying.
Yes, it is. Um, yeah. So when we were talking, I was thinking, I normally have cravings for burgers. I want
Mm-hmm.
burgers. It doesn't matter even if I try to say no, no Jade, no burger, right? No, because you will constantly be eating it, and it's not healthy, or it's not good to be constantly eating burgers. My mind won't rest until I get that burger, and I eat that burger. And noticing that sometimes I have to say, all right, yeah, that burger today, take a break. What is causing you to be wanting to eat this? Are you stressed? And as I said, dealing with the underlying issue of what is causing me to constantly wanting this burger to eat. Is it a stress reliever for me? How should I go about dealing with the stress so that I do not constantly want this? That's going to don't cause an issue with my body if I constantly eat it. So that's something also that we can try and do, as you had reiterated before, in terms of trying to figure out what is the underlying issue, why it is that you want this so much.
Yes. And I really talk to my clients about satisfaction is different than pleasure. So satisfaction is now and after we eat. How do we want to feel? Pleasure is all about the now, all about this moment, which is why I think mindfulness is good, but it also has limits. So mindfulness is about the now, it's about intentionality, it's fantastic. And you also need to think about the after, right? Like, okay, how satisfying is this going to be 20, 30 minutes after I eat, 2 hours after I eat tomorrow? And sometimes that satisfaction is affected by what we think of ourselves or that food, right? So if you're going to beat yourself up about eating a food, it's not going to feel as satisfying. But that may not be the food's fault. It might be the mindset.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it may also be, okay, yeah, when I eat burgers every day for 7 days in a row, I feel kind of sick or blah.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
sick, maybe just I don't feel as well as I do when I have a little variety in my diet.
Right.
So that piece of satisfaction, I know I want variety. I want more vegetables. I want, something, right? Oh, I just want to switch it up to eat a different food. Great. That is a preference that can lead you to satisfaction because you already know it's going to be more satisfying.
Right.
So you can listen to your own body rather than having those external rules that say you can only have X number of hamburgers every day or every month or whatever, or hamburger's not good for you, because it can be a great choice. It's got fat, proteins, and carbohydrates, and that is a really excellent blend for us to be eating a meal, right?
See,
That's
this is
very
this is what I like to
satisfying.
hear. This is what I like to hear. It has everything.
That's right. So, and I think that's partly why it's so satisfying. It like draws you in, right?
It is. Yes.
Yes.
Now you make it want a burger. But
Ah,
here we
yes.
go.
And now you can enjoy it without the guilt.
That's
And I bet
right.
that's going to feel different than when you eat that burger with a bunch of guilt and shame and feeling like you shouldn't have that burger.
That's right. That's right,
That's going to be a
Shelly.
much more satisfying experience. And maybe having that satisfying experience is actually what you're craving. And so when you are constantly stealing that away from yourself by saying, this can't be satisfying because I'm not supposed to enjoy it, because I'm supposed to be eating something else, and a hamburger is not good as something else. And there's this food ranking system, and we are feeling like now it's attributed to us, and we're not as good for eating this thing because we didn't choose the better thing. And see how ridiculous it becomes? It's like
Yes, it is.
it becomes more than food, and it's just food. Let's just make it neutral. It's just food.
Yes. I approve this message. I really do approve it. Oh my goodness. How can I create a balanced and nutritious meal plan to reduce the frequency of food cravings?
Well, I did hear one of your other guests say, if you can, work with a professional. If you can't, get some credible sources. And I think that would be the same recommendation that I would have is, if you can, you work with a professional who's trained in intuitive eating, the non-diet approach of intuitive eating, because that is going to help you to listen to your internal signals rather than those external food rules, which are just going to set you up for these shoulds and shouldn'ts and hierarchy of foods. If you can't, and even in your work with a professional, this is what's going to happen. They're going to help you learn how to follow that satisfaction. And once that satisfaction and that mindset is set so that you are free from your diets and free from your diet rules, then you can start bringing in that gentle nutrition. And so anytime you follow that process, your satisfaction is something that we seek naturally.
Right.
And it can be based on those internal cues. Again, internal cues rather than the external rules, right?
Right.
So when we follow those internal cues that are already inside of us, inside of our bodies, placed in there already, we will be eating in a way that is nourishing to our bodies and satisfies the nutrition recommendations without trying.
Right.
And I think that's where it really surprises a lot of people, that you can achieve a healthy way of eating without aiming directly at those nutrition recommendations, right? We can say that intuitive eating and learning those internal cues and aiming for satisfaction, that will give you a better health outcome in terms of your eating and then in terms of what that follows from, right? So like if you change the way you eat, we have a lot of research showing that there are certain things that are associated with lower disease risk.
Okay.
Longer life, that kind of thing. But we can achieve those the healthy eating patterns without actually having to try so hard. Like right now, our current recommendations are saying, oh, you should aim for these things and try really hard to get those things into your foods.
Right.
But if you aim for satisfaction, true satisfaction, and what is nourishing, and you start learning those internal cues and recovering them if they've been lost or pushed aside, if you start doing that instead, you will naturally get to those eating patterns.
Instead of stressing us to eat, let's be confident in how we're eating, and it'll be
Yes.
satisfactory for us. Then we don't want to constantly eat that way. But yeah, this social media has put, how is it? Social media and other personalities have put restrictions on how we eat. Oh, we should eat like this if we want to look this way. We should eat like this to be healthy, and it's not always conducive for everybody. It's not something that is friendly. It's not something that's approachable. It's not. It's more stressing than it's not. So we end up, instead of eating vegetables, we're stressed because we want to know weigh how much calories we're eating, and it's all too much.
Yes, and
really
it's
all
all
too
based on you need to do it perfectly or
Yes.
not. Even if there's talking about moderation, some people will be like, no, you don't have to be perfect, just perfect 80% of the time, and then you can do moderation. And it's like, well, yeah, but what are we moderating?
Exactly.
You don't moderate carrots. You only moderate the stuff that you feel like you're out of control around.
Oh my god.
So then that still has, underneath it all, still has that hierarchy of there are certain foods that are off limits. There are certain foods that are only allowed in certain times. There
Yes.
are certain foods that are going to make you not as good at eating as others.
Yes.
And that's
Oh, yeah.
just a lot of pressure to put on our food.
A whole heap of pressure on us. Food and on us. By the time we're done, we just go and buy some chicken because we're done with all of that. Are there any underlying medical or hormonal factors that may be contributing to our food cravings?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that a lot of women have noticed this, that cravings come up at certain times, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's not consistent throughout the month. And that's normal. Our hunger and fullness signals change throughout the month. Our ability to notice them changes throughout the month. The amount of energy that we need changes throughout the month. I don't hear a lot of people talking about that. Like we just think of ourselves as machines. Like everything should be constant every day of the week. We're going to need X number of calories, X number of protein, X number of fats, blah, 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 blah. It's all the same. And if you don't eat the same way every time, you go like, something's wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
I must be eating too much today. No, maybe you had more energy needs today, and it doesn't always mean that you moved more. Sometimes it's just something else is going on in your body and you need more energy.
Right.
Something else is happening and you need more energy, or you're just extra hungry, but there's going to be other days when you're not, right? So it's all going to even out, but these things change because our bodies are constantly changing. And, I speak mostly to women, so that's why I use all the women examples, but this happens with men too.
Right.
And so it's something that we have to think about. And you brought up pregnancy as well. Like that is big hormonal shifts. I mean, we have changes throughout our lifespan, right? Men or women, we have changes throughout our lifespan. And the human body is remarkable at trying to figure out what it needs.
Right.
And one of the ways that it will do that is by responding either to restriction when we've responded to those shifts and being like, no, I can't eat this. I'm hungry. Or, oh, that's not enough. And your body's like, well, hold up. I did need something, right? Let me just think of the thing that I can think of that was going to give me the most calories, the most energy, the most whatever at a time, because clearly we're going through a starvation period. Because your body doesn't know we're surrounded by food, right? Only your brain knows. So our body's going to respond to restriction by wanting more of stuff and slowing down our metabolism so that you can survive this, great drought or famine that is happening outside of you.
That's right.
But really it's not. So you don't want to start triggering that, right?
Right.
Yeah. Like sleep, stress, those kinds of things. Also, if you are having trouble with other aspects of your health or your life, our body is not like this nice little compartmentalized container where you drop a marble or something in one little container and it stays in that container. It's more like if you drop a marble in this container, it triggers 2 other containers to fill with water, and then another container over here to like start being wider, and another container over here to like completely empty its contents. It's all connected. So when we are talking about, oh yes, there's underlying conditions, absolutely, they could influence. The treatments for those underlying conditions can also influence, right? We start talking about medications, or we start talking about, are you on a restrictive diet for a specific medical condition? There's ways of changing your food and your nutrition to treat a medical condition that does not trigger that restriction. And again, intuitive eating professionals, dietitians in particular with intuitive eating training, that specialty, are going to be helpful for that. Eating disorders as a medical condition, as a psychiatric condition, those will trigger cravings. Even something like, I didn't get enough sleep, I'm really stressed. That cascade of hormones can sometimes affect cravings, especially because those often impact the way that we eat. So it impacts the normal pattern of eating. And when we have giant changes like that, sometimes that change alone, regardless of the hormones, that can trigger some cravings because it's different and you're not doing the same thing and all of this. So there's a lot of those different pieces, right, that can start to say, oh, this is way more complex than just don't eat the thing. Just tell yourself to like manage it, self-discipline, eat more vegetables. That's no fun, right?
I've been hearing it saying you need to eat more vegetables, and I look at the vegetables and I'm like, nope, let's find other ways to eat this. So even trying to find different ways to eat the things that are quote unquote healthy can also be taught. It can also be taught to do. Because even kids don't like vegetables. Adults don't like. I for one don't like vegetables. So in order to even get it in my diet, I have to probably do it in a smoothie or something. It has to be something that I like.
Yeah, and see that there's a difference there between saying you don't like vegetables and saying I don't like this vegetable in this way that I prepared it.
Okay.
Because you do like vegetables, you like them in your smoothie.
Yes.
Okay, so you like those vegetables prepared in that way. And that's a different thing than telling ourselves that story of like, I don't like vegetables and I have to trick myself into eating vegetables.
Oh, okay.
Because when we start tricking ourselves into eating vegetables, it means that vegetables are so icky that you have to hide and disguise. And we don't have to do that. We just have to figure out a way that, again, satisfaction, right?
Okay.
What is pleasurable? What is satisfying? Oh, vegetables in this way is satisfying and it makes you feel good. So that's the now and the later, the pleasurable now and the later.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's the satisfaction. That's what I'm saying is like, okay, when you've experimented enough and you found something that is satisfying, then it's naturally driving you to say, oh, look, I'm increasing my vegetable intake, but without having to go at it so hard. I mean, like, I just have to suffer through this vegetable.
So it's even what we tell ourselves that it matters, how we tell ourselves or how we go about doing things that really matters.
Yes. Again, it goes back to that purple elephant example, right?
Yes, right. It does. How can we incorporate healthier alternatives into our diets to replace less nutritious foods that we may tend to crave. And I want you to address it because there are times when people say, if you feel for ice cream, do a, or if you feel for a hot dog as a snack, do a carrot hot dog instead, and it doesn't taste the same. I've done it. It doesn't.
Right. Right.
It doesn't do anything. I don't know what
So
that is.
again, that would come back to why you want the thing. If you're hungry and any food will do, fine. Carrot hot dog thing will probably do it, but it's also not going to have as much energy, as much different nutrients as the hot dog will, right? We say like, oh, hot dog, it's not as healthy for us. Yeah, probably in the long term, yes. Carrots have different nutrients than the hot dog do, but it doesn't mean that our bodies don't know what to do with a hot dog, right?
Mm,
The hot dog has proteins, the carrot does not. So if we're talking about, oh, I want something that is savory and has protein, okay, that's not a carrot. Or you're going to have to do a lot to add that to the carrot, right?
yes. Hmm.
But if you're like, I just want a snack and anything will do because I'm hungry and I could eat like anything in front of me right now, I will eat a person if they get in the way of my food, right? Like that, we've all been there.
Yes, we have.
Like, get out of my way. I'm going to eat something or it's going to be you, right? Like that's how it's going to be. All right. I'm not saying like we should all be cannibals or anything, but like, there are those times
Yes,
when we're
they
like,
are.
okay, I'm
They
so
are.
hungry.
Hmm.
So if it's that, yeah, carrot's not going to be satisfying because that's not enough food at that point. But you're not going to care as much because you're so hungry you could eat anything.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that that's still the best choice when you really, really want that hot dog, and that's the amount of hunger you have. That's what would be the most satisfying now and after you eat. Great, eat the hot dog, right? Like, fantastic. Or if you're saying like, oh no, I've been eating a lot of vegetables lately, and I don't really want another vegetable. Great, eat the hot dog, right? There's plenty of times when you can eat the hot dog, but there's also plenty of times that, hot dog or the burger or whatever, and you say there's nothing wrong with eating the hot dog or the burger. And you know what? I did eat one yesterday, and maybe that's not going to make me feel the best today. And so maybe I want to think about what do I need? What would be the most nourishing? Is there something else that I maybe want, or is there something else that would be satisfying in a way that this may not be, or in a way that this is maybe more satisfying or something? Or I say maybe, say I'm about to go out to eat, right? I have a sudden craving for a hamburger, but I'm not going out to eat for another hour, and I'm going out with my significant other, and I want it to be a special night. I'm not going to eat the hamburger
Right.
1 hour right before I'm going out for a fancy dinner, right? Like
Right.
that's not going to happen. So I'm going to choose the less pleasurable option of
Right.
eating a
Maybe a Greek
snack now.
yogurt.
Yes. And so then I know it's going to last me an hour, but I'll still be hungry for whatever dinner we're going to eat together in an
Right.
hour. And that's a satisfying experience. It's not the same experience, right? So sometimes we have to think about satisfaction as broader than just I am substituting one for one, or I'm
Right.
attempting to substitute, with diet logic, which is not any kind of logic, and lie to myself that this carrot is a hot dog, or this lettuce is a hamburger, or this cauliflower is a pasta, or whatever it is that you
Please.
want to do. Because often that is some kind of hierarchy of this food is better than that food.
True.
This food is different, but it doesn't mean it's better. If, however, here's one thing that I will say. If the only thing that you want is something crunchy, like I don't really care, I just want something crunchy and hard because I'm maybe like really stressed and I just want to crunch it out. Great, carrot could work, right? Raw carrot could work. Some really crunchy nuts could work. Chips could work. You're not necessarily looking for like a specific food. You just want that experience or the function of it.
Right.
Fantastic. Switch them out if you don't care. If it's all the same to you, truly all the same to you, switch it out to something that, has more vitamins and minerals and has some fiber and is a vegetable or whatever. Often it's not all the same, so go with the thing that's satisfying.
Okay. Go with the thing that says. And the truth is, it can be also healthy. As I said, some nuts. It can do chips, but it can be some healthy chips. There's some foods that are actually good. I think it's just how we look at it. And if we continue looking at food as, oh my God, do I have to eat this? Then we're gonna feel that way, and we're not gonna want it.
Oh, of
So
course, if you have to force yourself. I mean,
right, right. How can we practice self-compassion and forgiveness when we give into food cravings occasionally?
I think it's the same as when we give into food cravings all the time, or Not at all, right? It's how would you talk to your friend, your best friend, or a
A
child,
stranger.
or a stranger? Yeah, that's a great one because sometimes we're harsher on the people we know.
Yes.
Um, if you're thinking about being polite and supportive, how are you going to talk to somebody and then talk to yourself that way? That's probably the number one thing, right? That's what self-compassion is. It's treating ourselves with that same compassion that we're going to treat everybody else with, but somehow we decide we don't deserve. You don't have to hold yourself to this impossible standard when really your body is just trying to feed you or just trying to nourish you or
Right.
trying to figure out how to support you. And some of that is going to be like, oh, okay, I did this thing, I ate this thing, and that was not satisfying. Then what? Because if it's satisfying, you can be like, congratulations, I chose something that was really satisfying in that moment, even if you ate the thing. You did something nourishing for your body and satisfying for your body, and that was good.
Right.
If you're not satisfied, you did something that gives you information. And information can help you make a more satisfying choice in the long run, in the
Right.
future, right? And that can be really hard because it feels like we failed. Because when we set ourselves up saying that if you don't eat perfectly, you failed, of course it feels like we failed. So
Right.
then that can be a piece of self compassion saying, I ate the thing. It feels like I failed, right? Acknowledging that feeling, the emotion, because otherwise it just spirals into the next eating instance. You say, I acknowledge, I feel disappointed in myself. I feel frustrated. I feel like I failed. I feel embarrassed. I feel out of control, which is what a lot of people feel like when they ate something that they didn't intend to. I feel out of control. I feel lazy or I feel full or whatever. You name that and then you again say, okay, I understand that this happened, right? Of course I feel like this because this is how I was set up to feel. What would be the most nourishing thing I can do for me right now? And that may be something of comfort. That may be something like getting a glass of water. That may be something like taking some deep breaths and changing into some comfortable clothes. That may be going on a walk, not to make up for the food that you ate, but to make yourself more comfortable and to give yourself some compassion in that moment. Because likely, if it was from like an emotion or something that was underlying, you still have that emotion left. It was just a mask, right? It's
Yes.
just a delay. You're
Yes.
still upset. You're still lonely. You're still sad. You're still bored. You still have that thing to be addressed, and that food did not fully meet that need.
Right.
And so now you have that unmet need and all the other drama that came with
Right.
doing something that was unsatisfying and you feeling bad about that.
Right.
So again, going back to like, what do I still need? What would be nourishing? And going and doing that thing, which is a little bit more complex now that it's layered, but still doable. And to know that you are still checking in with yourself, that you're still there for you, like you would be for a stranger or somebody you dearly love and have compassion for. It's the same situation whether you did it before you ate the thing or after.
Or after. Sounds good. Shelly, tell us where is it that we can find you? You gave us some good information and your person also that we can go to speak to if it is that we need to talk
Sure.
about this thing,
Sure.
or to look up anything, or to bear our problems with,
Yeah.
because there are so many people, especially during this time, who are going through a lot, and food is their comfort.
Oh,
Cravings their
absolutely.
comfort, and
Hmm.
sometimes they don't have anybody to talk to about it because people are gonna say just stop eating. People can't just stop eating sometimes when they have cravings. um
Well, and we can't just stop eating at all, right? Like it's different than other things because we need food.
we
So
need
we
food.
need to continue to eat. It's how do we develop that healthier relationship?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, so we need to talk to somebody about having a healthier relationship with food, and you're the person to. So how is it that we can contact you, get information from you, about this?
Yeah, thanks for asking. My website is confidentnutritionnow.com.
Mm-hmm.
Confidentnutritionnow.com. It has links to most everything else. But if you are on Instagram, I'm there too.
Mm-hmm.
Confident Nutrition Travels.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Facebook, I have a Facebook group, Intuitive Eating for Busy Women, I think it's called. It's been a while since I had to say that out loud, so I'm
That's
not sure.
right.
But we do discussions and questions and things like that. I'll pop in there every once in a while with a video or a tip. Um, but it's a great spot, like you said, if you're feeling like maybe you are the only one or you don't have somebody to talk to, and maybe it's not time for you to talk to a professional right now. That would be a great spot for you to be.
Nice. And it's intuitive eating for busy women on the Facebook group.
Ah, thank you.
Because I'm on the website now.
Perfect.
So that's what it is. So yes, you can call them, you can speak with them, and share with them the issues that we're going through. It's nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to be embarrassed about. We all go through it. We all struggle with it. So let us. It's best we find someone to speak to about it than to suffer alone.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're not alone. So many people are going through the same thing, and that's one of
Hmm.
the biggest encouragements that the people I work with have said is like, I thought I was the only one who struggled with this, or I thought that I was so weird, or I was so broken. There's something wrong, and it's not there's something wrong with you. There's just something wrong with the way that we're teaching people. And so of course you're going to struggle with this. And part of it is it's just we're human, right? So we're
Yes.
going to struggle with this no matter whether we were taught this or not. Like it's just sometimes a confusing thing. Um,
Yes.
and it helps to have other people, other resources, other, someone else to talk to, like an expert, if that's what you want to do.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it can just be helpful to even read something that shows you that someone else went through the same thing and survived. Like
Right.
sometimes
Right.
it's just that little piece of community that says you're gonna be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that alone will help. That alone will help. So
Mm.
thank you again so much, Shelley. I really appreciated you coming on and sharing your expertise in this area.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. And thank you to our listeners for listening to the Unfiltered by Jade. And we'll be back next week, Tuesday. Thank you.